My mother always said that locks don't apply to family, but she forgot that laws do. After my husband died, my world shattered into a million pieces. Seeking peace, I used the life insurance policy to buy a quiet, healing home for my baby and me. Just us. Just quiet. Or so I thought. That very first night, the phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice didn't carry comfort. It carried an order. We're coming tomorrow. Your sister's whole family needs the space. A big house sitting empty is a waste. When I protested, she laughed and uttered the words that would ignite a war. Locks don't apply to family. I didn't argue. I simply hung up, rocked my baby back to sleep, and made a single phone call. The next morning, they arrived with a moving truck. But what they found waiting for them changed everything. My name is Clara. I'm 28 years old, and just 3 months ago, I became a widow and a single mother all at once. The grief was a heavy, suffocating blanket, but looking at my 8-month-old baby boy, Leo, I knew I had to be strong. I used my late husband's life insurance policy to buy a small, charming house on the outskirts of the city. The first night there, the silence was beautiful. I finally felt a sense of peace settling into my bones. Then the phone rang. It was my mother, Eleanor. There was no, "How are you holding up?" or "Is the baby sleeping?" Instead, her voice cut through the quiet like a blade. "Clara, we're coming tomorrow. Your sister Vanessa's whole family needs the space. They lost their rental, and a big house sitting empty is just a waste." I gasped, my hand tightening on the receiver.
Mom, no.
This is my home. I bought this for Leo and me to heal. Eleanor let out a cold, patronizing laugh that made my blood run cold. Don't be selfish, Clara. Locks don't apply to family. The next morning, the rumbling of a massive engine woke me. I looked out the front window and saw a giant moving truck pulling right into my driveway. Behind it was my mother Eleanor's sedan. She stepped out, flanked by my sister Vanessa and her husband, all of them wearing smug, expectant smiles. They marched up to the front gate, arms full of boxes, fully expecting to walk right into my new life and take it over. Instead, they hit a wall. The heavy iron gate was padlocked shut, and standing right behind it were 2 burly private security guards I had hired the night before. Eleanor's jaw dropped. She rattled the iron bars, her face turning a furious shade of crimson as she realized she couldn't get in. "Clara, open this gate right now," she screamed toward the house, her voice full of raw entitlement. Vanessa began crying loudly, claiming I was abandoning them in their time of need. I stood calmly behind the glass, refusing to yield my sanctuary to their greed. Eleanor realized the guards weren't moving, so she stopped rattling the gate. She glared toward my window, pulling a folded legal document from her designer purse and holding it up like a trophy. "You think you're clever, Clara?" she shouted, her voice dripping with venom. "Your late husband signed a business agreement with me years ago. I backed his early ventures, and that money bought this place." It was a blatant lie, but she wasn't bluffing about the paperwork. Vanessa stopped crying long enough to smirk as Eleanor delivered her ultimatum. "I'm filing an official estate claim against this house today. I will tie you up in probate court until you don't have a single dollar left for a lawyer. You'll be broke, homeless, and begging me for help." She slammed the papers against the iron bars, promising to ruin me if I didn't hand over the keys. The panic could have paralyzed me, but looking down at Leo, I found a cold, sharp focus. I immediately hired David, a fierce estate attorney who specialized in uncovering financial deception. I handed him the paperwork Eleanor had threatened me with, along with my late husband's old business archives. David spent 3 days digging through the records, uncovering a truth that made my jaw drop. Eleanor hadn't invested a single dime of her own money into my husband's business. In reality, it was the exact opposite. 6 years ago, she had been granted temporary oversight of our joint family trust while my husband was hospitalized after an accident. She had systematically abused that trust, embezzling over $100,000 to fund Vanessa's lavish destination wedding and a string of failed boutique businesses. The vague agreement she was trying to use against me wasn't a contract at all. It was a poorly disguised paper trail of her own historic fraud. By filing this public estate claim, Eleanor had unknowingly forced her own illegal financial manipulation into the bright light of a courtroom. She had handed us the very rope we needed to pull her down. The day of the final hearing arrived, and the atmosphere inside the courtroom was suffocating. Eleanor and Vanessa sat across from me, radiating smug confidence. They whispered to their lawyer, clearly believing that a 28-year-old grieving widow would crumble under the threat of a prolonged lawsuit and gladly sign away the deeds just to make the nightmare disappear. I sat perfectly still next to David, my hands resting calmly on the table. When the judge called our case, Eleanor's attorney stood up with theatrical flair, presenting their fabricated claim and painting me as an ungrateful, uncooperative daughter. The judge turned to us, asking for the defense's response. David stood up, entirely unbothered by their performance. Instead of arguing, he calmly handed over the newly uncovered financial records, detailing every single unauthorized withdrawal Eleanor had made from the family trust. The absolute silence that followed was deafening. Eleanor's lawyer turned pale as he skimmed the pages, his confident smile vanishing instantly. The judge didn't take long to review the evidence. Within minutes, the courtroom shifted from a battleground to a trap, closing tight around my mother. The judge officially voided Eleanor's claim, reprimanding her for presenting fraudulent documents. But David wasn't done. He immediately executed our countersuit, demanding the immediate repayment of the embezzled $100,000 back to the estate, plus legal fees. The look of sheer horror on Eleanor's face was unforgettable. She had spent the last of her savings hiring an aggressive lawyer, fully expecting to win my house. Now, she was completely bankrupt. The wave of financial ruin hit Vanessa's family immediately after. Without Eleanor's constant financial life support, Vanessa and her husband couldn't afford a large rental. They were forced to pack up their things and move into a cramped, two-bedroom apartment they could barely afford. The very greed that drove them to steal my sanctuary ended up destroying their own. Today, my home is the sanctuary I always wanted. As I watch Leo take his first steps on the living room rug, I feel completely safe. I didn't just protect our house. I built an unbreakable fortress out of my boundaries. My mother learned the hard way that laws apply to everyone. Now, I'm curious about you. What would you do if your own mother tried to take away your home? Comment the city or country you are watching from so I can see how far our community reaches.